What's up, you Prep Panthers? All right, it's Mr. Farrell here with another video, tutorial, and this one's on graphing, okay? So when we're doing these graphing problems, we're gonna use two different points on a graph to find the slope of the graph, all right? So that's the main focus. Now this is gonna require us to use a couple of different skills. We're gonna first have to know how to read a graph, all right? What does it mean? We're gonna need to figure out how to calculate the slope. And then after we calculate the slope, we've got to interpret what does that mean, okay? So we're going to be working with this graph up here. Hope you all can see it clearly. We've got 5 meters per second, 10 meters per second, 15 meters per second, and 20 meters per second all along the y-axis. We've got 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and 4 seconds along the x-axis. Now, this y in meters per second, this is giving us velocity, all right? And along the x-axis in seconds, that's giving us time. So this is a VT graph, a velocity time graph, all right? Now, when we're working with this graph, we've got a couple of points listed, and we're gonna start figuring out how to calculate our slope. Now, the first thing we've gotta do is figure out how to interpret a graph, all right? So along here, these are our time values. Those are the independent variables. So whenever we go to find a point, we go along the time axis to find the independent variable point. Then we go up to find where it is on the velocity axis, okay? So up here, we see that they've given us 2 points to look at. They say T1 equals 2 seconds and T2 equals 4 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go along my time axis with the independent variable. I go T1 equals 2 seconds. All right, here's an important part to know. When it tells you T1, it is not telling you the first time. It's saying the first time that you're interested in is where T is equal to 2 seconds. The second time that you're interested in is where T equals 4 seconds. So the first time we're interested in is at T equals 2 seconds. So we're going to make a line up from T equals 2 seconds. And that hits this point on the graph. When we go over, right, let me draw it this way. Then we go from that dot over to the V-axis. That lets us know that this point where T1 equals 2 seconds, V1 equals 15 meters per second. Okay, so the reason we label it V1 is because it corresponds to T1. Okay, so this is our point 1. Okay, anything at point 1 is going to be listed with a subscript 1. Okay, now we're going to look at our second one. The second time you're interested in is where T equals 4 seconds. So we're going to go to T equals 4 seconds, make a dotted line all the way up until we hit our point. And then we're going to make a dotted line from our point all the way to our velocity axis. So where T2 equals 4 seconds, V2 equals 20 meters per second. All right. Now here's one thing that I don't want you all to be confused about. This is point 1. This is point 2. Everything at point 1 is listed with subscript 1. Everything at point 2 is listed with subscript 2. I know that in the past, some of you all have had the tendency to say, oh, well, V2 is, let's say V2 was instead down here. Sometimes people will say, oh, because this one's smaller, then this must actually be V1 and this must be V2. That's not true. It doesn't matter whether this next point is larger or smaller than the previous point. Because it is listed at T2, point 2, this is going to always be V2. If it's listed at the same point as T1, it's going to be V1. If it's listed at the same point as T2, it's going to be V2. All right. Now, another thing, just so you all can be aware of it, because you're going to run into these problems in the packet. Let's just say this wasn't written in meters per second, but it was just written as meters. 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters.